Hi guys, what's going on? It's me Sad Iqbal with another video of C language series, and in this video we are going to learn some basics of C language. We are not going to start any programming yet, so the objective of today's video is to understand the language fundamentals. Without wasting any time, let's jump to our actual topic of today's video. Today we are going to learn about tokens. So what is meant by token? Well, token is something which is representing something else. It can be an object. An object can be either physical or virtual. It can be an idea as well. All right. Now, what are C tokens? Well, in C language, the smallest individual units, they are known as tokens. One can say that it's a unit that makes sense to the compiler. Now, what is meant by compiler? Let's understand this first. Remember in the last video we discussed two units, input and output unit. Now the function of input unit is to convert your commands into computer understandable form, and output unit is something which is converting computer's commands into human understandable form. Same like this, when we write our program in C language, our computer cannot understand this. So for this purpose we need a piece of software to convert our source code into computer understandable form, and that software is known as compiler. All right. Now for tokens, just right now you keep this definition in your mind that it's a unit that makes sense to the compiler. At the end of this video I will try to explain everything in this video, which I will teach you with the help of an example so you can understand it in the better way. All right. Now the tokens in C language, they are of three types. The first type is known as constants, and the second type is known as variables, and the third one is keywords. We will take a look at them one by one. So number first, constants. What is meant by constant? Well, constant is something that does not or cannot change or vary. One can say that a quantity assumed to be unchanged throughout a given discussion is known as constant. Now, what are constants in C language? A constant refers to a value that does not change during the execution of a program. Now let's understand this line first. It says that once you define a constant in your program, then you cannot change it. Alright, when your program is running, you cannot change it. But here you need to understand one thing. When you are writing your C program, and once when you are defining a constant, you can assign it any value according to the data type, whatever value you want to assign it. Once you assign it and once your program is running, you cannot change it, you cannot modify it. You can use it, but you cannot change the value. All right. Now it is similar to mathematical calculations like pi, whose value is 22/7. Now in C language, the constants, they are divided into main parts. The first one is known as primary constants, and the second one is known as secondary constants. Today we are only going to talk about primary constants, and we will cover secondary constants when we will start writing the actual code, so that you can understand it that time in a better way. Now the primary constants, they are divided in three more parts. Now why? Because in our program we have to deal with different things, let's say with numbers, with fractions, with characters, with strings. So on this behalf, the primary constants, they are divided in three main types. The first one is known as integer constants. The second one is known as real constants, and the third one is known as character constants. Now what is integer constant and how we define an integer constant? Let's take a look at that. Integer constants are the constant data element that have no fractional parts or exponents. Alright. Now what is that? Well, integer constant is something without any fractional part in it or without any decimal point in it. Okay. So those values are known as integer constants in C language. Now what is meant by real constant? Real constant is totally opposite of integer constant. Real constants are the constant data element that have some fractional part or exponent, or the value with some decimal point in it. Alright, those are known as real constants, and real constants are also called the floating point constants. Now there are some rules to define or to construct an integer constant or real constant. Let's take a look at them. The rule number first is that it must have at least one digit. As we are talking about numbers, so once when we define an integer constant or the real constant, make sure that you assign it some value. All right, because if you don't assign it any value, it is going to have a garbage value in it, okay, which can cause problems or bugs in your program while running, or sometimes it won't compile. The rule number 2 is that the real constants must have a decimal point in it, because we are talking about real numbers, so real numbers must have a decimal point in it. Let's understand this first. The value between 0 and 1 is what we call the fractional numbers, a fractional value. Alright, so in real constants there must be some value after point. Let's say the valid example can be 5.50, 5.60, 5.99. Alright, it can be anything, but it must have a decimal point in it, some fractional value in it. Okay. Now, rule number 3 is related to integer constants. So it says that integer constants must not have a decimal point. Now, integer constants are the numbers which can either be positive or negative, but they cannot have any fractional values. Alright, we cannot assign a value to integer constant like 5.50, 5.99 or 6 point something. We cannot assign such type of value to integer constants. Rule number 4, as we are talking about numbers, so numbers can either be positive or negative. Alright. Rule number 5 is that it is assumed to be positive if there is no sign specified. Now what is meant by that? Let's say we defined an integer constant and we assigned it a value of 5. Now with that 5 there is no plus sign, no minus sign. So when your compiler will read that value, it will take it as a positive. So if you want to assign some negative value to any constant, real or integer, make sure that you insert a minus sign before its actual value. Alright. The rule number 6 is that the spaces and the commas are not allowed within it, like within the value. Let's say you assigned a value like 5,000. So now in the 5,000 there should not be any comma in it, or there should not be any space in it. So all 4 digits, they should be together. Alright. Now some examples for real constants can be 45.67. It's a valid example. For negative value it can be minus 6.55, and there are so many. The examples for integer constants can be 426 or plus 655, or for the negative number it can be minus 7,000. So I hope that the real constants and the integer constants, they are clear. Let's jump to our next type, known as character constants. Now the character constants, they are used to express the quantities like names, like places, or the genders. Alright. Now on this behalf, the character constants, they are divided in two types, in two main types. They can be either a single character constant or a group of characters. Now let's say you want your user to tell you their gender. So for gender you can use only one character, like M for male and F for female. And let's say you want user to tell you the name of his. So for this purpose you need string, because in name it can have 2 or more than 2 characters. So for this purpose you need 2 different type of character constants. Number first is single character constant, and number second is string character constant. Now what are single character constant, how we define it, or how we assign it some value? Let's take a look at that. A single character constant, it can be a single alphabet, a single digit, or a single special symbol, and it must be enclosed within the single quotation marks. Alright? And both the quotation marks or inverted commas should point towards the left. Some valid examples can be a single quotation mark A and then again single quotation mark. We can write some numbers or digits in it as well, and some signs as well. Let's say the third example here, single quotation mark 1 and again single quotation mark. Now when your compiler will read this value, it will take it as a single character, not as a digit, because it is enclosed within the single quotation mark. Alright, let's jump to next one, string character constant. Now a group of character is called string, and these constants are enclosed within the double quotation mark. The single character constants, they are enclosed within single quotation mark, while the string character constants, they are enclosed within double quotation mark. Alright, some valid examples can be double quotation mark my name and then again double quotation mark. Again we can use some digits as well and some signs as well. Now that's it with the constants. Let's talk about the next type of tokens known as variable. What is meant by that? Now, variable is something that does change or vary. One can say that a quantity assumed to be changed throughout a given discussion. Alright, now what are variables in C? Well, when we define something, a variable in our C language, so it will allocate some space in your computer's memory unit. Remember in the last video we talked about memory unit. So it is going to be stored there so that your program can use it. So a variable is a name given to that memory location that has been used to store any value is known as variable. Alright. One can say that we need variable like when we want to store the input of users for calculation. Let's say you are making a calculator and in this you want user to input two numbers and then you will store it somewhere first and then you will add them or do some calculation on it and then you will show some result to user. So for this purpose, when user will input his first number, you have to store it somewhere. When user will input the second number, you have to again store it somewhere, and then when you will perform your calculation, you have to store the result somewhere as well. So for this purpose, we need variables. Alright, now there are some rules to declare or to define variables in C. Let's take a look at them. The rule number one is that a variable is any combination of 1 to 31 alphabets or digits or underscores. Now, what is meant by that? Well, when you give a name, then make sure that it is within 1 to 31 alphabets. Alright, it can have digits and it can have the underscores. Now, this rule can vary with some different compilers, but make sure that your name is to the point and it's short. Alright. The rule number two is that the first character in a variable name must be an alphabet or an underscore. As in the rule number first, I said that we can use digits as well. But there is a limitation for that because you cannot start the name of your variable with a digit. You must start the name of variable with an alphabet or an underscore. Alright? The rule number three is that no commas or blanks are allowed within a variable name. Now what is meant by that? Let's say you want to declare a variable and you want to give it a name like my name. So my and name, they cannot have any space between them. They should be together. So for this purpose, to separate them, mostly programmers, they use underscore or sometimes they use the capital letter and then different things. Alright, but there should not be any space or blanks within the variable name. The rule number four is that some special symbols other than an underscore is not allowed. Alright. Now what is meant by that? Well, we can only use an underscore sign in our variable names. Let's say you want to use the and sign or star sign or percentage sign at the rate sign. You cannot use them. Okay. You can only use one special character which is an underscore. Now some valid examples can be my underscore name and then underscore age or max. Well, now how we declare a variable in C language, let's take a look at that. Well, a variable is declared by using a statement, and that statement contains the data type of the variable and the name of the variable. Now what is meant by data type? As I said earlier that we have to deal with different things, with numbers, with fractional numbers, with strings or characters. Alright, now let's say you want to store a number without any fractional point, you will use a different data type. If you want to store a string, you will use a different data type. If you want to store a character, again you will use a different data type. Alright, and then you will assign it definitely some name, and sometimes this statement can also contain the initial value of a variable. Now there is an example. For example, the statement int age is equal to 18 and then there is a semicolon. It declares a variable age of integer data type as we will store the numbers in it. So we are going to use the int data type or integer data type. And then it initializes it to 18. Alright, so that's how we declare a variable name, a proper variable in our C language. The next thing is, as we know that the maximum length allowed in variable name is 31, so make sure that it not exceed that amount. and make sure that your variable name is to the point. Let's say you want to store user's name, so you should assign that variable name as a name or user's name or something like that. You cannot assign it some different name like let's say age or anything else, or different things. Well, make sure that whenever you declare a variable, assign it the appropriate name and the short name and to the point name, because you have to use that name various time in your program so you can easily remember that. So it should not be very long. All right. Now, the next and the last type of tokens in C language is known as keywords. And keywords are the words whose meaning has already been explained to the compiler. Now, what is meant by that? Well, there are few words which your compiler already know them, and right? And they have some special meaning of them, or they have some special functions. All right. So the keywords, they cannot be used as a variable names, because if we do so, we are trying to assign a new meaning to the keyword. So which is not allowed by your computer simply. So this is it with the tokens in C language and its types. Now let's understand what we learned in this video with the help of an example. Now here you can see there are a few things. Well, let's take this as a memory unit. Alright, this is a memory unit of your computer, and it is divided in different cells. See, this is a cell again, so on. So every memory unit, it contains some small cells. Okay, and now when we declare a variable, it is going to be stored somewhere in this memory unit in some cells. All right. Now the example which we mentioned in slides was int age is equal to 18, and then there was a semicolon. Now what is that? When your compiler will read the first one, int, now it knows that you are going to store some numbers because that's the data type. It will tell your computer to allocate some space for your this int data type somewhere in this memory unit. So let's say your computer allocated space, the first cell of memory unit for you, for your variable. The next word, age. When your compiler will read this one, age, it will tell your computer to assign some name to that newly allocated memory. Okay, and then your computer will assign it some name like the name of the variable, age. Now we have some memory and we assigned it some name as well, but it is without any value, right? It doesn't have any value. Now when there is no value, so this cell is going to have some garbage value in it. Okay, it can be anything, it can be different. All right, and every cell have different garbage value. All right, so now to avoid this, to avoid that garbage value, we have to assign it some value as well. Now when your compiler will read this next token and equal to sign, it knows that what comes after this is going to be the value of that data type and that variable. So when your computer will read this 18, it will tell your computer to assign or to store that value in newly allocated memory unit or memory cell. Now it will assign it some value as well. And then after that there is a semicolon. Now this is the last token of the statement, and when your compiler will read this, it knows that this is the end of statement, and what comes after this is going to be the start of new statement. Okay, now in this one single line there are 5 tokens. First the data type, then the name, then an equal to sign, and then the value, and then a semicolon. Okay, now why we did that? Let's say we want our user to see something like this. Let's say we want to display something like this is 18. So now for this purpose we have to store somewhere our age first, and then in our program we have to display it to our user. Alright, so now for this purpose we use a statement. You don't have to understand this statement, but it's just for you that how we are going to display something in our C program. And then see again a double quotation mark as we are going to display a string. So my age is, and then I can use something like, let's say, okay, I will do it this way, percentage D, and then after that a comma, and then age, and then after that I can use a semicolon. Let me explain that. Okay, so now this is the line. With the help of this line, we are going to display this to our user. So when your compiler will read this thing, it knows that now the programmer wants to display something. Now what comes inside this, the double quotation mark, is going to be a string which we want to display. When your compiler will read this, and when your compiler will reach there, now it knows that what is meant by that is it is going to be this value, okay, and this value is stored somewhere there, and your computer or your compiler will replace this %d with 18, and it will display something like this. So I hope that this is clear, and you guys learned something with the help of this video. And if you have any question, you can simply comment below and I will try to help you out. And don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to download the application. I will provide the link in the description. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. Till then, practice.